Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel for another TA episode on Solana. In today's episode, we're going to be doing what we normally do. We're going to start off on the higher time frames. I specifically want to look at the bull market support bands, talk about where I expect these to capitulate. As I've been saying on my channel for the past couple of weeks, I do not believe the bottom is in for Solana. I think we have one final capitulation to the downside before we can expect the bottom to come in. We're going to be looking at how the bull market support bands will help us to buy nearer that bottoming range for Solana, and then as always we will be wrapping up the video looking at how Solana is performing against its BTC pair and looking at the oscillators, talking about the lower time frames, where is the momentum in the weekly time frame, daily time frame, 4-hourly time frame, and subsequently how is this going to affect the price coming into our next update. With that being said, let's start off on the higher time frames. I'm going to clear this chart up a little bit because I really want to focus on the bull market support bands for Solana. So these look very nice, especially if you put these over in a logarithmic growth curve scale. You can basically see the bull market support bands are a lagging indicator. If we look at the moving averages on here, you can see we have the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA. So these are taking in data points from 20 to 21 weeks ago, and subsequently, as you can imagine, they are lagging indicators. They pretty much tell you what you already know. When you are above the bull market support bands, as you can imagine, you are in a bull market. It seems pretty evident. You look at the price action, you don't need the bull market support bands to tell you that you are in a bull market. However, a lot of the times people struggle with getting out of the market at these overvalued levels when we are all the way up here at, for example, $170 was approximately where we crossed bearish below the bull market support bands. We actually came up to about $260, which was very impressive for Solana at the time. A lot of people missed out on selling the top for Solana. Me personally, I was not invested in Solana at this moment in time. I started to get in on some of these bounces towards the downside, specifically around about here is when I started majorly covering Solana. I did have Solana NFTs though, but however, I was unfortunately not in the market structure for this big run to the upside. But what you will notice is basically as soon as we cross below the bull market support bands, it doesn't matter whether you're looking at these on the daily or the weekly time frame. These are set moving averages and will not change depending on the time frame you're on. But you will notice if you basically sold when the bull market support bands capitulated, you would have sold with about 40% accuracy from the exact top, which kind of sounds like a fairly large amount to miss from the top. But bear in mind, if you have been hodling since it did flip bearish from the bull market support bands, you would still be down 80%. And this is quite brutal. I mean, Solana is down 88% from its previous all-time high, and you would have really only missed out about 8% of that move if you simply waited for the bull market support bands to capitulate and then get out. So what do I expect to happen for the bull market support bands as we have our final capitulation? Because you can see, once again, it tells you what you already know. You capitulate below the bull market support bands, and this almost perfectly called the exact top for Solana. Even when we had this nice rally, I don't think a lot of people were expecting a rally of this magnitude, because Solana literally moved up from about $75 all the way up to almost 150. It was 150 on some exchanges. Over here on Binance, the wick was up to 144. You will notice if we did look at what we had going on the bull market support bands at this period in time, we really came up to both the moving averages on the bull market support bands, but more importantly, we were range bound within this orange box, which constitutes your 0.5 Fibonacci, 618 and 786. This is how I draw my fibs, because this orange box within these Fibonaccis, these are the three most important levels. We bounced all the way back up to the 0.5 Fibonacci. We broke down, you can see on a weekly time frame, we were retesting the 618 multiple times as resistance. And as we started to break down, we really kind of just completely ignored the 786 Fibonacci. Maybe we spent a little bit of time. We really only bounced up to it one day, up to the 786, which really does just show extreme weakness. And you can see this was basically the floor for Solana. Once you capitulated below it, everything went tits up. Everything started to massively collide to the downside. But what's interesting is at this moment in time, the bull market support bands are really not moving too euphorically down to the downside. They're actually more or less just lollygagging at this moment in time. You can see we've just had a Another bearish cross. Now, sometimes you can still be in a bearish market structure, even when the green line is above the red line here, which is interesting because you can see we did flip with the green line up above, just like, you know, historically when you zoom out, typically the green line, shorter term moving averages on the top, and you are normally in a bullish market structure. Sometimes because the green line, which is the 21-week EMA, the exponential moving average takes in data points from, or it puts more weight in data points that were more recent. So as you can see, as you start to capitulate, it acts as a quicker moving averages, unlike the red one, which more or less just tells you what you already know. The green one can spot, you know, breakdowns just like here a lot quicker than crosses of the red line. But what you will notice is we've been range bound. You know, I mean, the bull market support band has been slowly trickling to the downside. But what's interesting is this is not normally how the bull market support band acts in a final capitulation event. Normally, you know, historically, we can go back, you can look at things like Ethereum, Cardano, and other cryptocurrencies that were back in 2018 when they had their major capitulation. I'm only going to show you Bitcoin. If you do want, be my guest, go through all of the cryptocurrencies in 2018, and they more or less had this exact same market structure. If you want to know how to put the bull market support bands on your trading view screen, then head over to my YouTube, click on playlists, and it will be underneath this educational series alongside 25 different videos that will help you navigate and get better at trading. With that being said though, like I've been saying, the bull market support bands have more or less just been slowly trickling to the downside. And as I always say on my channel, you know, these capitulations happen like waterfalls. You have trickle, where you've got water slowly trickling in, and then all of a sudden you have a flood of momentum, and that is what carries you to the last move of the downside. Just like we had over here with the pandemic scare. You know, we were slowly trickling down, and then a massive flood down to the downside. 2018 bear market, you can see more or less just slowly trickling down, and then that final flood comes very quickly. And within this final flood, you see the bull market support bands go from a more or less lollygagging slowly to the downside to a very quick capitulation. You can see that Bitcoin started breaking bullish above the bull market support bands at $4,100, which is important because the bottom was only down here at 3,100. So you would have missed out about 30% of the initial move on the bull market support bands. But if you did ride this all the way up until they started flipping bearish around about here, you could have made a trade once it flipped down, got back in. But more or less, from when the bull market support bands majorly crossed bearish at the top, there was a lot of signals over here, like the RSI being completely overbought at that period in time. But even if you missed out on the last rally, 1,142%, purely just based on trading the bull market support band. So why is this important for Solana? Based on my TA, what I've been talking about on my channel for, you know, a couple of months now, at least, you know, a plethora of weeks, I've been talking about my price targets, $9.99 Solana. Specifically, according to my TA, I have I'll show you in a second the lower term time frames, but $11 to $9, that is specifically where I think Solana is gearing up to head down to. Now, Solana, the bull market support bands, looks like they're getting ready for their final capitulation. You know, I'm really not a fan of trend lines, but nonetheless, you could draw something like this, which would be a bear flag. You can basically see that we are just range bound in this channel right now, and we are showing extreme weakness. This bounce that we've had is just a major bear flag. I'm not even going to extrapolate the price target of this because it will probably be in the minuses, and subsequently it wouldn't be valid whatsoever. But nonetheless, the bull market support bands do show me, along with the volume. If we look at the volume, you know, taking a trend line of best fit, you can see something like a scatter graph. If you draw the line of best fit throughout these data points, you can see that the volume is exponentially increasing. If we switch over to the Fibonacci candles to smoothen out the data, to take away from the bounces, because it takes a lot more momentum when you are looking at Fibonacci candles to have bounces, you will notice that it's basically, since almost the top up here, all the way down at the 10th of January 2022, we've just been experiencing a parabolic growth in volume. While this has been happening, the price has been moving to the downside. The RSI has not been diverging whatsoever. We've just been making, you know, double top formations, lower highs, displaying an extreme amount of weakness in the market right now. So When do I think the bottom is going to be for Solana? I will show you my price targets backed up by TA in a second, but I would also like to emphasize, until you have this final capitulation where you've got macro moving averages like the bull market support bands heading down for one final capitulation, then I do not believe the bottom is in for Solana. I don't think we're just going to slowly trickle to the side. I don't think we're going to slowly make our way down to our bottoming structure. I think we've been gearing up pretty fast. If you look at the charts, you remove the data, switch over to the Heikonashis and smooth things out. We've more or less just been dropping like a rock. But with that being said, we've not been dropping fast enough for the higher time frame moving averages like the bull market support band to have that final capitulation. We haven't had that final burst of fear breaking itself into the market, and subsequently I do not believe that the macro bottom for Solana is in or near quite yet. Obviously, I think the bottom is way closer than the top. I really only think we're about $20 away from the bottom, and obviously we're at about $32 now and we've come down from 260, so I don't think it's too insane to suggest that we would be moving down about another $20 or so. But with that being said, let's look at the market structure and then we'll move on to the oscillators. As we always do, we like to finish off on the lower time frames for the oscillators, because what we do our TA, and then just like we were saying over here, Solana's coming down, just like we were saying over in this video 4 days ago also that Solana's coming down. We look at the momentum indicators and we tell you where it's likely to head to in the next couple of days. And as we were saying in the last episode, momentum indicators were all calling for a flush to the downside, and this is what we're finally witnessing on Solana. When I say finally, I mean you zoom out, we more or less just had a dead cat bounce for the past couple of weeks. But as you can see, we've been range bound. We've basically fallen out of this massive bear flag. Was this the bear flag from before? Let's extrapolate the price target. Yeah, this is not going to get hit. It's all the way down here at like 90 cents. So I'm not even, humoring that price target. It's not going to happen in my opinion. Nonetheless, we have fallen to the downside of this bear flag. Not looking good from our most recent fib from our low to the high. We didn't quite make it to the 1.618. We bounced back up and got rejected from the 786. So while these Fibonacci's up here would now technically be invalidated as we are coming down to the retracement targets, the 1.618s, the 2.618s are definitely valid. 2.618 is way too bearish for my liking. The 1.618, as I've been saying, is your next target to the downside. We've been talking about this for the past couple of videos, but we were saying, I think I fat fingered this a tiny bit because this should be over at the 1.618 at $24. But we were basically saying we're going to come down another 36% or so. Since that video, we are down about 14.5%. I also have my macro bearish price target down here, which is basically we were calling for this at the exact same time. So as you can imagine, this has also moved down about 14% or so. I've been saying that I think we're going to have about another 73% drop for Solana. This would still equate to another 69% drop in the price action, which sounds a lot scarier than it is, because really we're at 32 right now, and I think coming down to $10 would be a very perfect place to pick up some Solana. I consider myself, I'm both a trader and an investor. When I am investing in these projects, I do like to get as cheap of a price as I can, and I do believe that the actual value of the Solana blockchain would much better be represented when Solana is $10. As you can imagine, Solana is the top 9 crypto at this moment in time. The market cap is very, very exponential, and for a cryptocurrency that's in beta, that has very much been struggling with even keeping its network open for the past year or so, I don't think the market cap of Solana is at all justified right now. That doesn't mean I don't like Solana. If you're new to the channel, before you think I'm a hater, my profile pic is a Solana NFT. My background is predominantly Solana NFTs. Solana is my favorite altcoin, but I've been sitting on the sideline for it for months, and subsequently I'm able to buy all my bags back for much, much cheaper right now. So the TA is saying 1.618 down here, $24 is your next line in the sand. My macro prediction, we've got this big green box and a bunch of data points down here. Let's see. So from the lows of all these wicks down here, and then you've basically got a small accumulation range before we did blast off for our mini bull run when Solana came up to $57, made a triple bottom structure, and then went on a massive run to its all-time high. We had this accumulation range. There's tons of touch points all the way down here. There's touch points down here at $10. There's touch points down here at $7.60. And like I said, $21, $12.50, $10, and $7.60. These are all going to be massive points of control. We could basically just pull this green box out. Let's see. So we could do something like this and say this is the area where I think Solana is going to be coming down to. If I mark this down a little bit more to be more conservative with the breakdown, you can see this is the range where I'm interested in picking up Solana. Specifically, I won't really be picking up much until we come down to $11. I do think we are at least heading down to $11 for Solana. Looking at the RSI, we've come up to the heartline again, round about 50, up to 54. What's interesting is many times Solana comes up to here. You know, you can see we broke up here, broke up here, broke up here, broke up here, didn't quite make it here. A lot of the time you find yourself coming up to the heartline and then breaking back down before you have a big run. Here we actually back tested the heartline and moved up. Once you were back below the heartline, you were retesting it, moving down every single time, moving down. Once you got above the heartline, massive run to the upside in the short term, and every other time we come into the heartline, we break down. So this was a major area of resistance for Solana. This makes sense for us to start losing strength on the relative strength index as we are looking at the market structure. On the daily time frame, looking at the bear flag that we are breaking to the downside on. So it all seems pretty clear that Solana is probably going to be down here at $24 within the next 2 weeks, in my opinion. Probably within the next week or so. That's just my opinion. I don't really like putting dates on my price targets. I much prefer to look at the TA for what it is, look at the momentum indicators and say at some point soon we are heading down to these areas. So $24 is definitely on the table, $19 is the next level in the sand, and then as we do come down to here to $10, this is when I'm going to be interested in picking up Solana. So what are the lower time frames saying? We've looked at the momentum and it's very obvious. I don't think we need to look at the weekly momentum indicators like the MACD, like the MFI, and like the squeeze bomb, because we've already gone through the higher time frame market structure, daily market structure, and it's very clear momentum is beating us down. And subsequently, as you can see, MACD is below the heartline, tons of bearish momentum. We've basically been cooling off for the past couple of weeks while we've been having this dead cat bounce, but we're probably going to start gearing up some more light red candles on the MACD indicative that we're going to break down. Squeeze bomb is putting in these light red candles, even though it's been subsiding as we've been kind of chopping down, because we've basically been the same price since the 9th of May. We are still basically the same price as the 9th of May. We've just slightly capitulated beneath it. But as you are seeing, tons of bearish volume coming in. The MFI, the money flow indicator, is going down, indicative that money is flowing out of the market. The squeeze bomb and MACD are both massively colliding to the downside. That seems self-explanatory. Let's head down to some of the lower term time frames and see what we can spot. So daily MACD has just started flipping bearish. In fact, the past 2 days, this is now starting its next leg to the downside. This is very interesting because it seems like the bulls are completely running out of strength every single time. Well, not every single time, because we had this was a fake out actually to the downside. This was a quick this kind of seemed like market makers grabbing liquidity. So if we consider this one trend and we consider this one trend, you've got a high up here. Even if we zoom back further, you've got a high, lower high, lower high, and now when we are flipping bullish on the daily MACD, you're just not even able to get up to the heartline, which is quite sad. But you are heading down, tons of bearish momentum is stepping in. Daily time frame as well, the money flow indicators come up to the heartline and is starting to lose control. It's starting to M out. The price action looks like it wants to head down to $24 very quickly. The squeeze bomb, the squeeze momentum indicator, is starting to trickle down into this dark green phase after having a very small little hill in the price action. Once again, a lower high from the previous run up that we had, which is once again indicative that bears are soon about to be taking over this downtrend. So a lot of people may think that we're heading down so fast right now that we really don't have that much room to move back down to the downside. But I mean, when you look at the money flow, it looks like money can once again take one last quick flush to the downside. And this ties in very nicely with what we've been talking about on the bull market support bands. Looking at altcoins, looking at Bitcoin back in their 2018 capitulations, there is always one quick flush out to the downside before the bottom is in. And I just don't think we've seen too much like that at this moment in time. I mean, you could still consider this to be one quick flush to the downside, and then you could consider this to be you know, this one quick leg to the downside before we found the bottom, but I do think the economy is in a completely different state than it was back here. So subsequently, I think that one last leg to the downside is really not too much to ask for. On the 4-hourly time frame, we had a tiny little bit of a rounding top into 2 lower highs. We tried to have a bullish flip. It is now turning into dark green, which is indicative that you're about to break down. Money flow indicators completely capitulating. Every bounce that we have is just a lower high in the higher time frames, at least on the 4-hourly higher time frames. As I do say, you are witnessing, as of the time of recording, that Solana is really heading down very fast on the 4-hourly time frame. And also looking at the MACD, you are getting these dark blue candles coming in, indicative that you are running out of momentum for the bulls, and bears are coming in, snatching that momentum and taking it out of the bulls' hands. 4-hourly MACD looks like it's getting very close to a bearish flip. And as I always say, I'm really not a fan of trend lines. I think you can draw them a million and one different ways to portray a bunch of different stories. For example, if I wanted to make things seem bearish, I could have just drawn it like this and said, you know, hey, we've already broken to the downside of this. If I wanted to make it seem bullish, I could have drawn something like this and say, hey, you know, we're making higher lows. So this is just why I'm not the biggest fan of trend lines. I feel like sometimes they can be skewed and strayed by your emotion, but this is how I draw it. We are still technically above it, but I do think we're getting ready for that breakdown. Once this breakdown is going to be solidifying, you're going to see everything from the MACD, the money flow indicator, the squeeze mom, the RSI. You're going to see the bull market support bands, your moving averages like your EMA ribbons. On the daily time frame, 4-hourly time frame, if we look at the daily EMA ribbons, this is how we were able to call the next leg to the downside. Every single time you come into these daily EMA ribbons, you have a capitulation. So subsequently, almost everything we can look at for Solana makes it seem like we are getting ready for a massive leg back down. Let's wrap up the video on Sol versus BTC. Clearing up the chart a bit, there's a few different ways how you can draw the EMA ribbons, the Fibonacci's. You can draw it like this. I personally had it drawn on the daily time frame, and I was drawing to the candle body closes. You can see this basically encompasses all of these candle body closes, and when we do this, this is why I have drawn it like this. It's a lot, the Fibonacci's are a lot better respected. For example, we perfectly came down to the 0.5, perfectly made a triple top formation, broke back down, 0.5 support, 382 rejection, 618 retest, 0.382 rejection, 786 retest, 618 Fibonacci rejection. And as you can see, Sol BTC really just looks like it has solidified that next rejection from our 618. We've come into the weekly EMA ribbons, and now we are heading down. MACD is in an absolute state on the higher time frames. So once again, a lot of people were getting out of bed for this bounce. A lot of people were saying, you know, why is Sol outperforming Bitcoin so hard? And I would like to say, you know, we've done this, you know, once, twice, and 3 times now since we've been in this massive landslide. So, you know, we've had an 81% pump, we've had a 53% pump, we've had another 85% pump. But if you do look at the market structure, every single time we pump, it is literally into a lower high formation. You know, you've got the top up here, you've got lower highs, you've got lower highs, you've got lower highs, and every time you have like 2 or 3 weeks worth of a pump. So this was, you know, quite a long pump. This was when people still thought we were in the bull market, which explains why it took a little bit longer. Here you had about 2 solid green candles. You had a green doji down here, just like you had a red doji down here. So most of the uptrend was done in 2 weeks. Most of the uptrend here was done in 2 weeks. And now you can already start to see selling pressure is pushing us back down. Just like on this bounce, we couldn't push up too high from Sol against Bitcoin because tons of sellers were looking to sell their Sol, buy Bitcoin at these price ranges. It looks exactly the same to what we're seeing right now. And I would definitely, I was about to say hazard a guess, but this is not a guess, this is based on TA. I would say that Sol is getting ready for its next major leg to the downside against Bitcoin. This is why I think Bitcoin may only head down to 16,500 to 14,000, but I still think Sol can head down to price targets like $11, $10, and $9 respectively. There is also price targets down here at about 760, 780. I don't think they're going to get hit. Nonetheless, that is still a valid price target. If you were looking to set price targets at these lower levels, hoping, even if you don't think they're going to get hit, but still hoping that they'll go down that low. For example, I don't think Bitcoin's going below 14,000. I'm still setting up buy price targets at 13, 12, 11, 10, and 9,000, even though I absolutely do not think they'll be hit. You don't want to see it go like a couple of $1,000s lower than you expect. Get all these nice buy price targets, and then it just moons to the upside. You would definitely want to take advantage of that final liquidation event. So wrapping everything up in a neat bow, I think we're getting ready for that final capitulation like we've been seeing in Bitcoin, like we've seen time over time again on the total crypto market cap. We are breaking below major areas of support. Solana is not performing well against Bitcoin in the higher time frames. It looks like we're getting ready to finish this bounce. The dollar is still very strong. The stock market is still very weak. Tie this all in a neat ribbon, talking about, wrapping this up with how the momentum indicators are looking for Solana, wrapping this up with the macro market structure, moving averages, and everything we've looked at. It does show me that in the next couple of weeks, we should expect a $24 Solana, and subsequently in the next couple of months, $11 to $9 is where I personally think Solana is heading down to. So that was definitely an extensive market update. I hope that gave you insights to what I think is going to be playing out in the market in the next couple of weeks, in the next couple of months, and specifically up until our next video, which I probably will do in the next 3 or 4 days. It depends on how quickly we move. If we just lollygag, crab sideways for the next couple of days, don't expect any type of update. But if we do have a next major leg down, this is when I plan on updating you. I do not cover Sol every day. I do not cover altcoins every day. I cover them when I see something major going on. So until the next update, $24 is the next lower time price target. That is all I've got for you today. As always, Cowboy out. Peace.